I'm flying over the city of Austin. This is not a green screen. This is real live footage of me levitating 300 feet above downtown Austin. Okay, sorry, had a little technical glitch there, but what I'm trying to do is go live here on YouTube using the saved... There we go, and it's working. All right. I thank you so much for joining me. My name is Nathan Bernier, and we're doing something experimental here. We're doing something new and different. That's why I look a little sickly in the face. I'm still trying to figure out this green screen. This is not about the technology. This is about something super important that's going to be happening in Austin this week, and I'm so glad you could join me to talk about it, because there has been so much news coverage on this topic, including my own, that doesn't... I'm talking about my own coverage here. Just you don't have the time to go as in-depth as you need to do on this important topic that I think we're going to discuss here in 500 words, 600 words, in a 5-minute story. This is really an issue that no matter where you fall on it, it's going to affect Austin for a long time. Talking about the idea of putting parks over I-35. So I'm Nathan Bernier. I'm with KUT News, and we're going to dive deep on this pivotal decision today. Now, this is a project that could reshape Austin for generations to come. It could also drain the city of precious financial resources for generations to come. So the city council is really split on this issue, and 6 votes are needed to decide the outcome, and we have a vote scheduled for this Thursday. So in this live stream, we're just going to take a look at, what the caps are, how they could be implemented, how much they would cost, the pros, the cons. And then I got two city council members with opposing views on this. We're going to hear from them and have a little bit of a conversation or a debate between the two. But I just wanted first to start by thanking you for joining me. Unscripted long-form news is not something that we do a lot of here on at KUT, or I feel like legacy media in general. But so I just want to. This is sort of a caveat for you. Like I'm talking largely off the cuff here. This is not like some scripted documentary. I'm just hanging out with you, and we're going to talk. We're going to go through some documents. Going to show you some photos, and we're going to hear from these council members. And I hope that you can chime in too. Please like, subscribe, do all that stuff, and leave a comment whether you have a question or just say what you're feeling. So first of all, let's dive in then. I wanted to start by showing you some photos, and let me bring it way back. This is one of the caps. This is a proposed cap at 11th Street. And what we're talking about here here it is. Here's Cesar Chavez to 4th Street. The Texas Department of Transportation is planning to lower I-35. In fact, they've already started on this project. This is... I think the largest project ever, certainly in the Austin district. This is one of the biggest projects in TxDOT history. We're talking about the expansion of I-35 through central Austin. Really, they're expanding the interstate through the entire county, but they've split it up into 3 chunks. And the biggest, by far, chunk is the one that's going through the middle of the city. And so part of this involves lowering the highway up to 40 feet beneath ground level from Holly Street to Airport Boulevard. And as I go through this, I'm going to bring up stuff on my browser so I can just show you. Well, probably part of this little live stream might be cut up into a radio program for those who enjoy just listening. But I would also hope that you can, for the most part, can listen to this if you don't want to look at your screen. I'll try and describe things if you can't see it. But I just want to hop over here to Firefox, my browser, real fast. And we have this ultimate guide. This is sort of like a lowdown of what a TxDOT is planning for the interstate. This is the I-35 Capital Express Central project. We're talking the main thing they want to do is build 2 extra managed lanes. These are HOV lanes, high occupancy vehicle lanes, in each direction from Ben White Boulevard to US 290 East. So the lanes in this case, would be restricted to first responders or people who are have vehicles with 2 or more people in them. Let me just check real fast if we are in all the right places real fast. No, I can't do that. No, logged out of X. How dare they? It needs my auth. Okay, so let's go back to Firefox here. Other things that TxDOT is going to do. Well, they're hiring a contractor to do this. So, they're tearing down the upper decks. Those upper decks that were built in 1975 from Main Road to Airport, say goodbye to those. That view of the city as you're coming southbound on the southbound lanes, you won't be able to see that anymore because the decks are going to be gone. They've sat there for a very long time, 50 years, in fact. And so, some other sidebar here, the lanes are going to be narrower. The main lanes, we're talking going from 12 feet wide to 11 feet wide. We have a story about that at KUT.org. There's going to be 14 widened east-west vehicle bridges and at least 7 standalone pedestrian bridges over the highway. A larger interchange at Riverside Drive. There was going to be a single-point urban interchange at Airport Boulevard, but that's been changed. The car crossing at Woodland is gone, and there's going to be more than 20 miles of shared use paths. But overall, they're talking about adding more than 30 lanes, 30 miles of lane from Ben White to US 290 East. More than 30 miles of lanes between that 8-mile stretch. So it's not just 2 HOV lanes. There's also extra frontage road lanes and in some cases auxiliary lanes. So lanes, a lot of lanes. But the thing that we're talking about today is enabled by this, sinking the main lanes 30 to 40 feet below ground level from Holly Street to Airport Boulevard, potentially lower in some cases, but essentially an open-air highway canyon, which allows the opportunity to put these caps, as they're called, on top. You may have seen, you're familiar with Clyde Warren Park. They have this in Dallas. It's a 5-acre cap. Austin is looking at doing up to 26 acres. Honestly, I don't know, given the political debate, if they're going to go to 26, given the costs, because the estimated cost of building all of this is $1.4 billion. And if that goes up, the city has to pay the difference. The estimated maintenance and operations costs are almost $50 million. Of course, if that goes up, the city has to pay the difference. But let's just see, this is what 3rd Street might look like. Again, these are City of Austin renderings, and as we'll hear a bit later from one of the city council members, he doesn't feel like these renderings are exactly accurate. But this is what the City of Austin has put out in terms of what these caps could look like. Here's 4th to 7th Street, so this would be sort of feeding into the 6th Street Entertainment District. You've got Capital Metro Rail, the red line going across there over the interstate. That's going to happen no matter whether they build caps or not. And the exact amenities on top, these are more conceptual. It's not guaranteed it's going to be this walkway, this elevated walkway. I did want to, this is going to come up later, I wanted to show you this rendering, which is done by some pro-cap activists. This is sort of what 4th and 7th would look like without the cap, generally speaking. But it just gives you an idea of what a lowered highway with the bridges over it would look like. So this is kind of the highway version without the caps. There would be, TxDOT, as I mentioned, would build widened bridges, and there would be, I don't know if it's, these people are pro-cap, so they may not have done complete justice for these crossings because there would be some amenities on these crossings, definitely widened sidewalks. You wouldn't be walking on, when you cross, it says here Chavez, you got that little 4 or 5 foot wide sidewalks, kind of terrifying to walk over the interstate. It would be a lot wider than that. And there would be a buffer between cars and vehicles and bike lanes and stuff. But, basically imagine a little bit nicer pedestrian cyclist crossings, but you're looking at a lowered highway that goes underneath these bridges. Here's the 11th to 12th Street cap, serving sort of as a gateway to the African American Cultural Heritage District on 11th Street. And this is, I showed you at the start at eye level. And this is all the potential locations of the caps. So not depicted in any of these renderings is caps from 38.5 Street to Airport Boulevard. So, near Hancock Center, where there's some redevelopment going on, Fiesta kind of connecting all of that area. But you wouldn't necessarily, especially there, you wouldn't really be able to just walk across the frontage road and get on the cap up here. They would have some barriers. So you'd have to, cross at a street crossing. But let's, it's such, I've been covering I-35 for a long time, and not as long as others, but for a few years anyway. And it's one of these highways for me is very unusual, coming from a foreign land myself, where you have, and this was really a product of the interstate highway system development in the 1950s and 60s, this idea that the highways, the freeways needed to go directly into the middle of the town to bring traffic to the city and bring commerce and business to the city and blah, blah, blah. But there is, there is routing decisions where the highway went in many U.S. cities, including in Austin, indisputably affected black and brown neighborhoods disproportionately. And you saw it here in Austin. East Avenue this is the street. This was East Avenue before. This is where I-35 was built. This was East Avenue, a boulevard that served as a segregation line in Austin for a very long time. And go back and look at the 1928 plan. It wasn't just a de facto when it was de jure. It was like an actual set in city code for some time. This is the segregation line. Whites on this side, black and brown folk on the other side. And it just, it disrupted these communities. And I had a story about this, which I wanted to share with you just a little bit of the history, because it's actually TxDOT history. So you go to site KUT.org, I-35 TxDOT lawsuit. And so this is, I found amusing because in filings in court, TxDOT argued that I-35 never caused racial discrimination in Austin, and that contradicted TxDOT. It was, technically the Texas Attorney General's office arguing on behalf of TxDOT over this lawsuit that's against the highway expansion. But there are just some very, in the environmental report that TxDOT had to produce for this highway, there are some historical analyses that talk about, how I-35 reinforced the segregated division between the largely white population of Central and West Austin and the largely black and Hispanic population in East Austin, south of Manor Road. This is by an architectural and engineering firm called Mead and Hunt. They're based in Wisconsin, but they produce these reports with TxDOT's logo on them. They were done for TxDOT, and they provide a lot of detail, like neighborhood level detail, which I don't want this to be a 5-hour stream because we could spend all day on just this topic. But like, for example, the I-35 led to the eventual demolition of Samuel Houston College, Wynn School, East Avenue Park, numerous other homes and businesses that once lined East Avenue. Here's some Samuel Houston College graduates attending a convocation ceremony in the middle of East Avenue back in 1947. Of course, according to that report, the construction of I-35 led to the eventual demolition of that college. And there were Mexican Americans also who were already facing racial discrimination and limited housing choices because of the real estate contracts that would bar sales to non-Caucasians, formed their own communities through the early 20th century that would, again, become severed by this highway. This Mead and Hunt report talks about, quote, the construction of I-35, which was completed in May 1962 along former East Avenue, cut off Lower Waller Creek, including Palm School and Palm Park from East Austin. And these factors drove displacement of Mexican-American residents living along Lower Waller Creek. And the report goes on, cutting off residents. Basically, there were people living on either side of East Avenue in this community, and residents were cut off in the Driscoll and Rainy Bridge View subdivisions from East Austin. And there were many citations referring to studies by an Austin-based historic preservation consultant, HHM and Associates, saying, they're saying many of the predominantly Mexican-American children who attended Palm School lived in East Austin, so they couldn't easily walk to campus and lost access to Palm Park as well. Of course, as I mentioned, you could do that Cesar Chavez crossing. It wasn't like, they were completely 100% walled in, but it definitely had a tremendous impact. And it just, exacerbated the racial divide that already existed. And this is outlined in the civil rights complaint that's been filed with the Federal Highway Administration, and relying on some of the same official documentation. So that's just, some of the history. Let's go through and just look at some of these photos. Like, here's East Avenue. This is supposedly 1933. I'm not exactly sure where it is because I've other photos. Like, this is from 1930s East Avenue. You can see it's paved. This one is not paved. A lot of these are from the Austin History Center. Other images here are from actually the TxDOT archives. TxDOT has their own historian who was very helpful in providing these. Actually, I got these when I was working on a podcast you should check out if you're interested in this topic. It goes a little bit deeper. It's Growth Machine. It's actually KUT's Audrey McGlinchey, KUT housing reporter Audrey McGlinchey. It's her podcast, but I did one episode with her, Roads to Everywhere. And you just Google Growth Machine I-35 or something, it'll come up. Actually, the entire podcast is great, but just specifically to this issue, that podcast episode is more about how it affected housing. So, East Avenue again, East Avenue again. Now, I'm sorry. I'm actually got to go back to preview here. Thank you for letting me know. And let me just check the chat here and make sure I'm not missing anything. All right. Multi-stream chat. I'm new. I'm dang new to this stuff. Okay, we're getting some folks here talking in the chat. This is fantastic. Thank you all. And I apologize in advance for, gaining my sea legs here. This is the first of many of these. I just want to be able to talk to you, basically, and show you stuff like we're in the same room together and you're looking at my computer. Just like we're hanging out and talking about stuff. And so sometimes I forget to switch back from Firefox to preview. Not the first time that's happened to me on one of these live streams, so thank you. And a big thank you to Stephanie for letting me know about that. Hey, Stephanie, I see you out there. Welcome back. Now, here's more East Avenue. Again, look at how old that car is. Can you zoom in on that? Yeah, it's not super high-res photo. More, this is sort of undated East Avenue. This is where I-35 is right now. Now, the highway started building the highway. There's a whole history to how they chose the alignment. There were other streets that were considered, according to reports in the Austrian American Statesman. One of them, I forget which one, it was like San Jacinto, or one of them was immediately discarded because it would have gone through the Austin Country Club, I think where the Hancock Center is now, and you can't have that. No, let's put it here where these residential communities are. That makes way more sense. Of course, that was the thinking at the time, right? And these communities that were affected, black and brown communities, typically had less political power, and there is rich historical evidence that these communities were specifically chosen as locations where the highway would be routed. Now let's fast forward a little bit here. 1950. This is one of my favorite of these historical photos. This is I-35 at what is now Airport Boulevard, and you could see sort of what is now the Hancock Center. This area, it is just very, very different than what you see today. So what a difference 75 years can make. A little bit north, 1959, this is I-35 at US 290. I-35 at US 290 as I flip through here and make sure everything's working. Again, pretty rural, and that's obviously changed a lot. And so, but I guess the point I'm trying to make here, 59, you had I-35 at US 290 already up and running, but down here, this is also 1959, December 1959, it had not sort of reached downtown Austin yet. It took many years to build this highway. This is 1960. This is East Avenue from the top of Brackenridge Hospital in 1960. And you can see there's some starting to become what looks like I-35. This is 1960, downtown construction of I-35. Also, you can see where they're started to build these decks. This is like 6th Street, 7th Street area right downtown at I-35 in 1960. What is the 8th month? I can never remember when it gets to that. The 8th month, July, August, I think, or September? No, August. This is August 24th, 1960, in Austin, Texas, right downtown there. And, construction continued. You can see the highway starting to take shape, and here we are. Finally, it opened in 1962. They had a ribbon of girls for their ribbon cutting ceremony. It's kind of creepy sounding, honestly, but that's my subjective opinion. And you might get some of my subjective opinions during this live stream, by the way. This is not like a thoroughly edited or vetted script that you might expect when you go to KUT.org. This is just me being me and trying to be fair here, but also this is what you were looking at in 1962, March 29th, 1962. And so they had the opening ceremony here, a cavalcade of a bunch of white men in suits, mostly. And there we go. Here we go. 1972. This is what the highway looked like. You can kind of see the cars becoming more up to date. And there hadn't been any major changes to this highway until the upper decks were constructed. Oops, this is present day. This was like last week. The upper decks were constructed in 1975. And so that was the big change. Since 1962, that's basically it. There have been other minor changes like This roundabout near 51st Street was installed. Little projects like that here and there, repaving and like slight reconfigurations, but nothing major. And so this is what we're looking at today. Now, of course, what TxDOT is doing by lowering the highway is enabling some capping to take place. So let's take a look at some documents here. By the way, I just got an open records request filled. So I requested the 30% designs for these caps, and they arrived this morning, in my Public Records Center portal at the Texas Department of Transportation. But I have the wrong password saved, and if I try one more attempt, they're going to lock me out. So I don't think we'll be able to look at those today. But I have lots of other stuff to look at. Don't worry. This is a city design, and this is sort of like the amenity plan. So I talked already about where the caps would go. And this gives you a little bit of an idea of what could go on these caps. This is a very large PDF, which you might be able to tell every time I zoom in, it like takes forever to load. Whoa, that's glitching out. Let's go one more zoom level in. No, it doesn't like that. All right, let's try the next page. So here we go. This is Cesar Chavez to 4th. Along the bottom here, you can see these illustrations, these examples. Hammock Grove, a covered open-air market space and dining, a pavilion splash pad, the East Avenue Trail, which is a whole other thing this would be a part of, like a trail along the caps. And I don't know a lot, honestly, I don't know a lot about that. I haven't done a ton of reporting, but it would be a brand new trail that was not envisioned before this. Will this let me zoom in? These are like massive images in these PDFs. Ridiculously large images that Adobe Acrobat does not want me to show you. But here, the 11th to 12th Street cap, they'd be looking at Mural Exhibition Place, some kind of civic plaza, play area, shaded parks and native plantings. The Holly Street Stitch is another of the caps being considered. Technically, it's a stitch. Caps are supposed to be of a certain width, but whatever. Let's just call them caps so that we don't have to switch back and forth. And caps are supposed to have like the ventilation in case there's a fire and the foam to put out the fire. But that's the idea of a cap. A stitch, you don't need that stuff. So they do cost less, per square foot, per acre or whatever. This is imagined to be a 38.5 Street to 41st Street cap, an interpretive garden maybe, picnic tables, beer garden. I mean, they're really just throwing ideas out there for this. It's sort of like, and this is another, imagine if there were a metro rail station, or I guess it's just called Cap Metro Rail Station, a red line station on the cap, because the train station is going to go right over this. This building, there's a building here that used to be Nature's Treasures. It's just to orient you. And again, this is the realm of possibility. And finally, this last one, maybe a sports field or a dog park or a running track on the red line to Airport Boulevard cap. So just to give you an idea of some of what we're looking at here. Now, this is the map showing the locations of these caps and the total potential caps and stitches at 26.3 acres. The University of Texas is also moving forward with building caps. And we're going to get to sort of the nitty-gritty of what that means. But basically, they had the opportunity to cap I-35, the University of Texas did, from 15th Street to Dean Keaton. And what the UT regents have opted to do is to move forward with the possibility of capping 15th to MLK and then putting another 800-foot cap from between MLK and Dean Keaton. So they're not really going to do the whole thing. Yeah, UT, which has a pretty big endowment and substantial, more resources than the city, I believe, to do this kind of thing, although they have their own demands too. They have their own fiscal demands too, but that's what they're doing. And so I want to get a little specific here about the funding and what we're talking about. So this week, on Thursday, the Austin City Council is going to vote on whether to move forward with Phase 1, which are they call them the city, this is a city of Austin term, the roadway elements. And basically the roadway elements are not the caps, not the decks, nothing. It's just essentially the columns that would hold up the caps, because TxDOT would have to install, these caps weigh a lot. They'd have trees on them, splash pads, concrete, buildings up to 2 stories tall. And that weighs a lot. So you can't just slap it on top of the lowered highway. You have to have extra thick columns to support them. And that costs a big chunk of money. It's not the whole cost, but it is a big chunk of that. And there's also the additional cost of having to excavate the highway that much lower. So they have to go that much lower to make space for the caps on top. They have to have clearance, of course, for high vehicles. And it's not just the deck on top, but there are as I mentioned, the ventilation fans should there be a fire. Now, those fans are not ventilating just exhaust. They won't be on most of the time. They'll get tested routinely, but they're really just there for a fire. And so now, this is a really important point that honestly, it's easy to miss. So the city council on Thursday is going to vote, at least as it stands now. They could vote on whatever they want, essentially, if they all agree. But the item that's before the council on Thursday is about the roadway elements only. But they could also vote to pay for the deck structures on top. And if the sooner you pay for the deck structures, the less it costs. And there's a big reason for that, and it's because TxDOT, so let me take a step back. TxDOT has imposed a deadline on the city of Austin saying, you have to let us know what you want and how you're going to pay for it by May 31st. The reason TxDOT is saying that is they're going to take this out to bid. They want to bid these projects out. And so that's basically I think they call it letting. Essentially, it's exactly what you think. A bunch of construction companies say, I'll do it for that much. I'll do it for this much. I'll do it for that much. And they take the lowest bid, essentially, I forget their exact system, but they're looking for the best possible value. That's why they put it out to bid. Construction companies compete on price. Now, that letting process, that's what Austin is trying to sort of jump onto right now, to piggyback on right now. So everything that they do by the end of May, that's what goes into the letting, whether it's just the roadway elements, whether it's the roadway elements and the deck structures. So, and so whatever the city does not do, for example, deck structures, doesn't look like they're going to do that. That's going to be it's called a change order. So the contractor wins the bid, they go out, they build the highway, and then they have to do a change order. So no longer is it just a bunch of companies competing on price. And then it's just one company and saying, oh yeah, okay, you want to change it? Sure, it's going to be this much. Now, it's not like they can just name any price in the world, but it would cost more than having a competitive bid. So I just want to make that clear that the city is not, and by the way, the University of Texas, they only went forward with the roadway elements. The University of Texas they may do I'm sure they'll do the deck structures eventually, but right now it's just the roadway elements. The roadway elements, it's now or never. Whatever they don't do by May 31st, that's it. There's never going to be a cap there. Maybe, again, there was this, they were saying a while back, the city and TxDOT, there was this thing, it would be a 50 years and then maybe you could do it. But I think that my understanding is that was just thrown out there as like a number, 50 years, because, 50 years, they might have to, according to TxDOT, they might have to like do more work on the highway, or 50 years ago, they were doing the upper deck. So maybe they'll do, maybe in 50 years, they'll do another project. But basically it's now or never. So the roadway elements for these caps, the ones, the blue ones, we're talking, let me just go through this in case you're listening. The 26 acres, 26.3 acres. There's the Holly Stitch. That's the first cap. I'm going to call it a cap. Sue me. Holly Stitch, that's just under an acre. Okay, so that would be just south of Holly Street, because Holly, now it goes under the highway. It will go over, of course, because the highway will be lowered. Holly. Then there's, and these kind of, so then there's the Cesar Chavez Stitch, which is it would just be like a quarter of an acre south of Cesar Chavez, just kind of jutting out south of that crossing. And then Cesar Chavez to 4th Street cap, 5.3 acres. That's basically the size of Clyde Warren Park in Dallas. Then from 4th to 7th, you'd have another cap about 3 acres, 3.28 acres. So you would have capped in that scenario from just south of Cesar Chavez up to 7th Street. That would be like one cap, but there would be crossings. There would be what can I say? There would be bridges. There would be frontage roads. So you can't. It's not like you could just meander, anywhere onto these caps. You would, at least on the west side of the caps, you'd have to cross frontage roads, and I believe it's 3 frontage road lanes in each direction, depending on the location, and maybe some turn lanes. So you're not gonna, and a median. So you're not gonna just like some people might jaywalk, but you're gonna want to go down to the traffic light and to get on the cap. Once you're on the cap, you're on the cap. But if you're on the Cesar Chavez to 4th Street cap, I don't believe you'll be able just to walk onto the 4th to 7th Street cap, because there's going to be roads there crossing the highway. So at 4th Street, for example, you'd have a road crossing the highway. Okay, 4th to 7th Street. Then a cap from 11th to 12th, a little over 2 acres. Then you've got the UT caps, and then it's not North Austin, but the Cherrywood area, Hancock Center area, 38.5 Street to 41st Street cap. That would be 5 acres. That alone would be basically as big as the Cesar Chavez to 7th Street one, from 38.5 to 41st Street. Then there'd be a cap from 41st Street to the Red Line, which we looked at. That would be almost 5 acres, and then another cap bigger than 4 acres from the Red Line to Airport Boulevard. So that's the full suite. And there's a timeline. This is an older timeline, but just to give you an idea. Now, there have been numerous. Here's an illustration here, just to give you an idea. Here's an illustration showing the roadway elements, hazmat catchment, and fire extinguisher foam. So there would be essentially some kind of space beneath the highway for the fire extinguisher foam and hazmat catchment to exist. Another reason that the highway would need to be excavated lower anywhere you want to put in a cap. Now, I wanted to take you, sort of bring you up to present day, and we're skipping over a lot here just because I'm in the weeds on this one, so I gotta apologize. Okay. Oh, we got a comment here from the Red Line Parkway Initiative, which is involved in this, and so I'd like to add state this. At 4th Street and at 3rd Street, pedestrian and bike traffic will not cross at grade with any car traffic. That's an excellent point. There are pedestrian crossings here, so you would be able to, cross over the frontage roads. Say you're coming down 4th Street, you could cross over the frontage roads. You wouldn't have to wait at that traffic light at 4th and 3rd, so extra crossings. And there's going to be, Andrew Clement says there will be traffic lights at all intersections. Walking will be allowed at a red light, like all intersections. And I'm sorry if I gave the impression otherwise, but yes, of course, at the intersection, you would be able to cross. I guess what I was talking about is someone might, like, if you've been to the Clyde Warren cap in Dallas, and I want to show you a picture of it if I can find it, so bear with me here. The Clyde Warren cap in Dallas, you can basically it's like a couple lanes of traffic and a sidewalk on the other side of the street. So it's very easy to just hop over if you're not on the cap. Yes, there are specific pedestrian crossings to get onto it, but there are, but it's not, it would just be a little bit different in Austin. And I wonder if I can just so I went there last summer and I got so many pictures and drone photos that I want to show you all. But I wonder if I have a photo of the road here. Oh, sorry, just bear with me 1 second. You know what? I'm just going to throw a bunch of these into preview. We're going to have just totally, this is live, y'all. Okay, so let me bring it back here on preview. These are just random photos from my time there. This is a father and son playing ping pong on the Clyde Warren cap and under a little shade structure. There's this fountain splash pad in Dallas, and you can see in the background there's the Woodle Rogers Freeway. But I'll tell you, this was a hot day in July. Oh yeah, there's a little reading room here with books and magazines. This is sponsored by the Dallas Morning News, and I believe that I had some drone stuff too. Oh yeah, here's some drone photos. So let me just throw a whole bunch of these on, and we'll just flip through and see what works. This is a different cap that's being built in Dallas, but this is the Clyde Warren cap. And I'll say this is a hot day in July. I was in the middle of the cap, and it was very pleasant. I was surprised. I was not expecting it to be nice. I was a little cynical, I was like, this is aerial shot of the drone. A drone shot of the fountain. It was hot. I was wearing shorts and whatever, a short sleeve shirt, but there was a lot of shade. There was a breeze. It was getting close to 100 degrees that day. But I couldn't really hear, like, it's downtown, so you hear traffic, but you don't hear, like, it doesn't sound like you're standing next to I-35 now. So it was a very pleasant experience, and this is a very popular park. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Let's go back into the docs here. Oh, yeah, and Red Line Parkway Initiative says same at the northern Red Line Parkway crossing. So you will, because along where the red line crosses the cap, you'll be able to walk right across. And Parsa T says Clyde Warren revolutionized downtown Dallas. And yeah, absolutely. And I want to play you some video about that. So this is, okay. So we heard about the nice things about caps. Clyde Warren Park looks great. These things come at a cost, though. There is absolutely a cost to making this happen, and it comes at the expense of other priorities. And that's why this is so controversial on the city council. That's why it's so controversial in Austin. Just to continue on this note here of being able to cross the street and get to the cap, Andrew Clements says the North InSync, which is like the North Central something neighborhood coalition. Sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head. The people who are pro-cap, they're asking for those frontage roads to be as pedestrian-friendly as possible, 30 to 35 mile an hour speed limits. He says returning to East Avenue somewhat in terms of speed. So if that were the case, maybe would be easier to cross over. But let's get to this. So this is earlier this month, Kimberly Olivares is a director of financial services at the city of Austin, and this is where I wanted to. This is the nitty gritty. Okay, that everything up until now is kind of background that maybe you've heard before, but what I struggled to communicate in a 600-word story is the following hours worth of information. However long this takes, we're going to be here however long, up until 3 p.m. But you can pause and come back later if you want. So I don't think it'll be 3 hours. I'm hoping not, but I do want to get through all this stuff, and I do want to do it in a way that is in plain English and not in government speak, which is often what you hear when you watch these city council work sessions. I'm getting really warm. My face is looking green because of the green screen, but it's I'm feeling a little green because I'm so warm, but actually I'm fine. So whatever. I'm going through her presentation here, blah, blah, blah. They brought in Hyatt Brown, which is a DC-based engineering consultant. I looked at the city checkbook. I think it was a $7,500 contract. Correct me if I'm wrong. There were about $7,500 in payments made to Hyatt Brown around this time. And so, that's what I'm going by, but I haven't double checked. So don't quote me on that. This is a live stream again. This is not a thoroughly vetted KUT.org news report. But I just want to be able to talk to you, friction free here. So I'm going to tell you what I know, and I'm going to tell you what I don't know. I'm going to, be real and be honest. So, no, I did not eat a bad burrito, Andrew. But it might look like that if my face turns green. So this is the dude. You know what? Let me just play you this guy. What is his name again? I have it pulled up here. This is a guy. He is with Hyatt Brown. His name is Mark Gilbert. And here he is. This is just him sort of laying. So basically the city asked him, will these caps pay for themselves? Can you do this analysis? I'm going to play for you this first cut. Just him sort of like talking about what he's doing here.
That's not to say that it is a comprehensive analysis of all economic impacts. It does not estimate tax benefits to other taxing entities other than the city. We don't speculate on the indirect and induced effects from caps. That can be very complicated in a busy urban downtown. And we certainly don't assess the many qualitative benefits of caps to the community that many advocates would happily discuss further, from connectivity to recreational space, local business opportunities, construction jobs, public.
Okay, blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. Sorry, I got a lot of cuts here. Basically, this is just this analysis looked strictly at revenue to the city from cap activities, estimates of potential revenue from like the land values going up, because presumably, I think you could safely say people want to live people would be more likely to want to live next to a cap than a highway canyon. And so that would, make the land worth more than it would be worth otherwise. And I know that I said we were moving forward, but there is one really important thing that I do want to talk about here, which is this it's like a table that really lays out a bunch of, here we go. So this is the costs. So there's $105 million that the city was expecting to get from the federal government. In fact, the federal government awarded this grant, but then the Trump administration came along, and because this grant has the word equity in it, it's the NAE grant. It's the Neighborhood Access and Equity Grant. They were going through and looking at grants, and that was not a word that they wanted to hear in a lot of these programs, or they were scrutinizing programs that focused on equity. And so this, I don't know exactly what happened, but that happened, and the grant is no longer. The city's not counting on getting this grant. Maybe there's some scenario where they could, but they're just looking at what they're going to do without this $105 million grant. So basically, the only money they have for this is a $41 million loan from the State Infrastructure Bank, which is like a TxDOT bank. So 41, that's all they got. So these are the different scenarios. This table makes my head hurt. But I just show it to you to give you an idea. They're looking at a bunch of different scenarios. Maybe they could do Cesar Chavez to 4th Street and 11th to 12th. Maybe they could do Cesar Chavez to 4th Street, but have a smaller cap. Maybe, and so on and on. This is that menu of options. But the bottom line is the maximum estimate is just about $1.4 billion, plus almost $50 million annually in maintenance and operations, which the city would need to pay. But they're not looking at $1.4 billion now. The vote on Thursday is for just the support structures, and even then, the city wouldn't have to pay that right away. I was told by TxDOT they have to pay 15% by 2026, and then each year they would pay an additional amount based on how much work the contractor does that year. So it's not like if the city council votes on this yes on Thursday, they have to write a check for whatever the amount is. It's over $200 million. It's $244 million. Let's just bring it up here. You know what? Let's do a little Civics 101 here in case you ever want to find this stuff out. I mean, a lot of you probably know this already. City of Austin Council Meeting Info Center. You just go here, bop, and this is where you find all the docs. And this would be the 22nd. And I-35, boom, $244 million is what they are looking at. And this is called the backup material, the draft ordinance here. So the vote's $244 million. Well, that's what the draft ordinance is. They could change it. They could say, you know what, we want to do the caps too. Let's just go all in. Or they could say, let's spend just $14 million and just do one tiny little cap. But for now, we're just saying $244 million. That's basically what we're looking at for now. All right. So we've seen the menu of where did my PDF go? We've seen the menu of options. This is what they're looking at. Now, I wanted to just hear a little bit more from Hyatt Brown, because your tax dollars, good money was spent on this. You might as well deserve to hear what they say. So first, let's hear about off-cap revenue potential. So this is, well, I think 2 is on cap. So let's hear on cap revenue potential from Mark Gilbert.
So the next quick section goes over just the cap revenue potential. So how can you make money on the cap for the city of Austin? We had to make some certain key assumptions for this. One was that the city would be funding the base infrastructure of phase 1, 2, and 3. That was based on some parks and rec precedents for partnership agreements, as well as the NAE grant expectations for the Cesar Chavez to 4th cap. And we assumed that the city would essentially be on the hook for that structural O&M cost, given its legal agreement with TxDOT. That follows the precedent with Clyde Warren Park as well. We assumed a conservancy would spring into existence to fund and build the outdoor amenities in what's called phase 4 and the buildings in phase 5, and that they would be able to fundraise and solicit funds to do that, use naming rights and things that were provided to the foundation to solicit funds, as well as generate enough annual revenue to cover the ongoing O&M costs on top of the cap for whatever amenities they ultimately built. And finally, we had a third assumption that developers would be willing to enter into ground leases with the city to construct buildings for the purposes of retail, and that those funds would make the buildings occur, and that they would be responsible for their own O&M on those buildings. Something really important to talk about with you all are the cap development limitations. I think all of you are aware of them, but just to make it very explicit, we know the roadway infrastructure TxDOT is building will limit us to essentially 2-story buildings in height. We do not have any reason to see the Capitol View corridors going away right away related to the highway, but as well as some in East Austin and South Austin, which do have impacts to potential site development. And then there's our precedents regarding lease restrictions. We've been able to look at air rights agreements between TxDOT and CAPS in Dallas, for example. So we would be anticipating limitations on that as well. Perhaps a 50-year lease with some extension options. And then, of course, you have to decide if that would be conveyed or demolished at the end of the lease period. So that's something y'all need to consider. And then the funding implications. The source of funding that is ultimately provided to build and or maintain these caps could limit private revenue generation opportunities. To estimate the on-cap value revenue potential, we built out, almost like using Legos, the vision plans that the community had supported to come up with different functions and sizes of those functions: commercial space, cultural centers, a lot of outdoor spaces, rental spaces. And we used this to generate a potential revenue scenario. And so this is kind of a left to right read of each of the 5 major cap opportunities. The first column of capital cost, including all the costs we've received thus far from TxDOT related to phase 1 to 3 construction. Financing is what we've made some assumptions about how the cost of borrowing. And then the commercial revenue is largely made on the commercial uses from the vision plan. So we did a net operating income assumptions to come up with a residual land value that a developer might be willing to pay for a retail structure of 1 to 2 stories. And then we added that ground lease, the net present value of that ground lease payment with projected potential sales and mixed beverage taxes to come up with the numbers you see in column 3. Column 4 are those ongoing city expenses, which are those payments to TxDOT just for annual structural O&M, and that's where we come up with the negative number in the net cap revenue column at the end here. So the takeaway is that as it relates to trying to make funding revenue from on-cap development pay for some of the infrastructure, it falls short.
Okay, so that's the lowdown there. I mean, sorry, that was like a really long cut. Let's just skip ahead through his off-cap revenue potential. Basically, they're, rather than playing the cut, I'll just let you know that they estimated that this is Hyatt Brown estimating that how much land values might go up within a specific proximity from these caps. They're saying that the estimates west of the highway of how much land values would go up are reduced to account for the Waterloo Greenway's overlapping impact, because that's already pushing land values higher. I will say they're some folks I've talked to who are close to this, involved in city government, were a little skeptical of this presentation and thought that it was overly conservative. And obviously it doesn't address any of the benefits that are not directly financially tied to the caps. I'll say here, we've got Andrew Clements here making a sort of diving into the weeds, saying that this presentation does not consider what could happen if adjoining land if there was like a TERS, a tax increment refinance zone, or transit oriented development districts were created around the caps. So all that to say, without going into TERS or TODs, that maybe these numbers are right, maybe they're a little under, but that's the case being made, and so the bottom line here is when it comes to the return on investment. This is the last. Actually, you know what? I want to jump ahead to the Clyde Warren Park comparison because we hear it brought up so much. Hey, I brought up Clyde Warren Park, and he's saying that this is the cap skeptic argument here that Clyde Warren Park, according to Mark Gilbert with Hyatt Brown, isn't really the best comparison for Austin.
We thought it would be interesting to share visuals of you of Clyde Warren Park since it's such a comp for this analysis. This is the condition overhead in the year 2011. You can actually see in the area bounded in green the ongoing construction happening of Clyde Warren Park in 2011. But what we've done is highlight in red all the vacant and predominantly vacant sites. Lots of parking lots. This is important because it's such a different context in downtown and uptown Dallas from what we're talking about today in 2025 in Austin. Much of downtown and uptown Dallas had already been placed in their value capture districts. They had a TERS in 1996 and a subsequent addition in 2005 that really laid the groundwork to capture the value from this investment. So when we see what has happened since then to 2025, we've seen a full urban renaissance in Dallas that anyone that's been there can see. But the timing of that cap development prior to the large-scale redevelopment is what allowed it to realize the significant value to capture a lot of these new developments and the value they've brought.
So that's the case he's making. And now let's go into the city finances around this, because the big concern about spending on these caps, as nice as they might be, is that it would eat away at the city's ability to borrow money for other stuff. And so we're going to hear from Kim Oliveros with the city again. She's in charge of the money. And, well, she's not in charge of the money, but I forget her official title. It used to be Deputy Chief Financial Officer, and I think she has a new title. It was up here somewhere. I'll find it. But anyway, this is Kim Oliveros with the City of Austin talking about, there she is, Director of Financial Services, talking about basically the city's debt limit and what this will mean for that. This is about the debt capacity analysis.
So currently our debt per capita, that is one of the most important metrics when it comes to our overall credit rating. Our current debt per capita is just over $1,600. If with taking into account all of our authorized but unissued general obligation-backed bonds, we looked at that and then layered on top of it multiple scenarios to see at what point could it trigger a downgrade. So we did a 500 million, 750 million, 1 billion, and 1.2 billion, as we had done some prior analysis around 1.2 billion between cap work and 2026 bond. With a $500 million bond election, and by bond election, it's for any use, whether it's for other city projects or a cap and stitch, plus our ABUs, it would take us up to nearly $3,400 per capita. And ranging to 1.2 billion would take us to over $3,600 per capita. The debt metrics with the Standard & Poor rating score scorecard is 20% of your overall credit rating. So PFM, which is the city's financial advisor, and they are here as well today to answer any detailed questions regarding our credit ratings, among many other things. Based on the analysis of what the bond sales schedule looked like and how that impacts our debt per capita, we would be at risk of a downgrade as early as 2027 under S&P's scorecard and 2031 by Moody's and Fitch. Currently, we are AA with Moody's and Fitch. We're AAA still with S&P. We have been doing quite a bit of work in recent years relative relative to our pension systems to help boost how we appear to the credit rating agencies. But assuming no change in state law, the highest that we could recommend for cap and stitch 2026 bond election or anything of additional general obligation backed debt would be $750 million. Once you go past that number, we start getting high enough in that category 5 for the debt metrics that we're really at that risk of a downgrade.
Yeah, so that's Kim Oliveris, and so there's that to think about, right? And this is what the skeptical city council members who are like, I don't know about this, and we're going to hear from one of them coming up as we have our little conversation with a council member from both sides, saying, you know what, like we have so many competing priorities that this is just so much money. On Thursday, they're going to vote, as I said, for the roadway elements, also for the 100% cap design costs, and of course any other decks that they want to integrate into that package. So I want to play you one more quick cut from a city official, and this is Michelle Marks. She's basically sort of overseeing the cap and stitch project with Our Future 35, and actually she was overseeing it, and then she got moved up in the department. So anyway, she's with, most people probably don't really care specifically what each official's position is. I'll know that she's with the Transportation and Public Works Department, and she's sort of setting the stage here on the caps and the timeline.
So just a couple of kind of reminder slides. This is the same material we shared with you at work session last month, but looking at the kind of funding and phasing timeline in front of us. This month is our required commitment timeline to determine which roadway elements the city is going to be committing to funding.
And we kind of went through that already. What I really did want to play for you is the City of Austin staff recommendation on the caps. They're presenting all of these. This is to the City Council. This is the range of possibilities, what you could do. This is what we think you should do.
So the updated staff recommendation we have for you today is really intended to be calibrated to that kind of debt capacity and financial outlook that Kim and Mark just shared with us. And that is scenario 1. And this is kind of it is at the low end of the various packaging options that we've been putting together for you. Scenario 1 includes funding the roadway elements for the full cap length between Cesar Chavez and 4th Street, as well as the cap between 11th and 12th Street. Notably, it doesn't include any cap or roadway elements between 4th and 7th, nor any of the roadway elements or cap decks in the northern segment of the corridor between 38th and Airport Boulevard. You'll see here that what we're recommending for funding commitment this month are the Phase 1 roadway elements. So that is $49 million in funding commitment, plus a $6 million commitment to pursue the structural engineering and design work for the cap decks. Considering the existing state infrastructure bank loan that we have secured for $41 million, that leaves a remaining funding need of $14 million for those roadway elements and completion of design work.
So that's if they go with the city's staff recommendation. They wouldn't need the $244 million for all of the support structures on, and again, they're not going to pay this on Thursday, but she was talking about the staff recommendation, which again is just Cesar Chavez to 4th Street, and then 11th to 12th Street. Nothing north of 12th Street for the city of Austin. And so this, this is a very important decision for these reasons. It's so much money at stake. But also, for a lot of council members, this is about more than the money. This is about the history that we kind of went through at the beginning of this. It's about the historical injustice of putting the highway there in the first place. So I want to play you one of those cuts from Councilmember Jose Velasquez.
These caps can bring so much value to Austin, and we will not get another chance in our lifetimes to do this. And I can't hammer that down enough. We will not get another chance in our lifetimes to do this. Well, some of y'all won't. I'm planning to live to 150, so some of y'all won't be here when Jose III is up on the dais making these decisions. But for me, this is about healing a scar that I've lived through, that ripped through our city almost 100 years ago by way of the 1928 master plan, a division that was literally cemented when I-35 came through, also known to some in East Austin about some in East Side as the Great Wall of Austin. This is about making right a division that should never have existed. This is about accessibility. It's about equity. And this is a statement of our values and fidelity to this diocese claim that we are in Austin for all. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to bring East and West together. And I look forward to working on it, continuing to work on it.
Natasha Harper Madison, another council member very much in favor of these caps, really delivered one of the most impassioned defenses of them. And I really regret that I had some technical problems and couldn't get the video clip working. I got the video, but the audio wasn't playing. I'm still learning Premiere, so I apologize, but I'll basically tell you what she said. Which was, she's just framed this again as sort of a moral, historical, and for her a very deeply personal obligation. And she said this, this is an emotionally heavy decision, and she connected it to the city's legacy of segregation and the city's history of divestment in East Austin. And she said the project was really about reconnecting a city that was deliberately fractured. Those were her exact words, was deliberately fractured by the 1928 master plan and the construction of I-35. And she said, Harper Madison said that, she's heard from Black Austinites all over the city, even those who no longer live in East Austin, who see the caps as a form of a symbolic repair, or like a physical step toward repair. That she was emphatic that you can never really repair, but that it's more than just basically parks or beautification, that it's, more than just recreation, that there's a historical justice aspect to this. And she really pushed back on her opponents. And this is her quote: "I am dug in. I will never give up," she said. So, she is, she's making this argument, the historical argument. Now, let's just go back here before we go to our count. Actually, I did try, and I will tell you, I wanted to interview either Velasquez or Harper Madison about their personal experiences growing up in East Austin, around the highway and all of that. Unfortunately, neither was available in the time frame last week that I wanted to talk to them, so it just didn't work out. But we are going to hear a debate about this, but from a couple other council members. But first, just two more quick hits from city staff about where the money is supposed to come from. Basically, they're saying that the city, we're going to need philanthropy, you're going to need private sector money. This is Kim Oliveros again, talking about how, the city is going to need some rich folks to come up and say, hey, why don't you name this part after me or that part after me? If you go to Clyde Warren Park in Dallas, in fact, let me show you this. Go to Clyde Warren Park. You can just look up Clyde Warren Park. I don't bother spelling things because Google will fix it for me. But check out the map and park map, and you can just see everything. Lots of this stuff is named, like the Snowden Family Pavilion, the Sheeta and Jolie Grant Children's Park. In fact, I believe this was named after them by a wealthy friend, but nonetheless, it's still someone giving money and saying, hey, name this park, children's park, this thing, Janes Lane, the Ginsburg Family Great Lawn, Chase Promenade, Chase Bank, I presume. So there's the corporate sector coming in. Nancy Collins Fisher Pavilion. So these people, they get to have their name on a park that people love in Dallas, and the park, they get money to build these things, like a performance pavilion or a fountain, the Nancy Best Fountain. That was a big one. The one I showed earlier of the overhead aerial photo right here on the right-hand side, that's the Nancy Best Fountain. And that was a more recent addition, if I recall correctly. So, basically the city of Austin staff are saying, we need that too.
To just speak to the financial landscape in general, historically, the city of Austin, when it comes to major infrastructure projects like this, we have largely provided all the funding to make them a reality. As council has heard in the various budget conversations, the upcoming briefing in the Audit Finance Committee meeting, the financial landscape has changed dramatically for us with changes in state law and the sort. So we're really at a point now where the approach that the city covers the entire tab is just not feasible long-term any longer. So this is where we have to make the ask to philanthropic folks, corporations, whomever, to step up and join us in helping make this kind of investment a reality.
So she's talking about various state laws that have really made it more difficult for municipal governments in Texas to tax and spend. I mean, there was a law passed, you may have heard of this yourself, a few sessions ago, that imposed a 3.5% cap on how much money cities can raise in revenue each fiscal year without an election. It used to be 8%, and that was lowered quite dramatically to 3.5% because of concerns about growing property tax bills. And that does not include new properties being built in that city, but for existing properties, that's the property tax cap. And so one last cut here. This is just Mike Rogers, who's actually the assistant city manager, but came here from Dallas, talking about, hey, it's not just philanthropy. I think we need the corporate sector, or the private sector to pitch in as well. Again, like that Chase Promenade or whatever, just get some corporation, be like, okay, you can name this after your company.
I can look at history. And in one of the slides actually showed with each of the other types of cap projects, there was roughly, for those who had municipal investment, about 20% investment was done from the municipal governments. The rest was done through other means. And so I believe it's very important for us. I can't say we will get there or not, but once we show our investment as the stack, this is where all the other projects have been. Now, this is really the dog wagging the tail, because each and every one of those projects started with already having the philanthropic and then coming to the city. So we are at a different point, but we must go out to the private sector. I wish we had more time than the end of this month. We really need that. But we have to have the philanthropic or the private sector really a part of this project to make it work. And that's where these meetings, there is interest with our private sector, not our private, such as the Opportunity Austins, the Chambers, and others, who believe that, yes, this is an opportunity for all of us to really start working towards that goal. And we're going to have to. And it's not just the city. I mean, we have our finance people, we have our engineering folks that have been kind of championing this project. At this stage, we have to have our economic development folks that are really looking at that next stage and acquiring that type of support. So can I put a guarantee on it? Absolutely not. However, I can say past practices, when you look at the other projects, it's been about this same percentage when the municipal governments have funded a project.
All right, so that's Mike Rogers. And Hayden Walker in the chat here makes an important point that, yeah, Kyle Warren is the son of Kelsey Warren, who's basically like a energy magnate here in Texas and just made his wealth, in the natural gas industry. And he certainly was on the Board of Regents, the University of Texas Board of Regents. I think he still is. Let's take a look here with me. Warren, is he still? This is not the members. Members. Current Regents. Here we go. Current Regents. Warren. Yeah, there he is. Right there. Kelsey Warren. He is on the University of Texas Board of Regents. So he's a vote for the caps by UT Austin. But just to the point that, hey, in Dallas, they had a lot of private money, and it started with a sort of in the private sector, philanthropic sector. My understanding is, whereas this is this what he's saying? Like we just said, cart before the horse or tail wag the dog, whatever. This is in this case, it's kind of going the opposite way. The city is starting the conversation about caps and then going out and looking for private money. And these are just some comparisons here of the costs of the different highway caps. But you do have to factor in, of course, the time that's gone by. You know, we're at 2025 now. I mean, these were, you know, you can see the years there. And also, we're looking at a much bigger cap and stitch project than, for example, Southern Gateway or whatever, or Clyde Warren. So, you know, there's a lot there to digest, and I am not touching on every single detail here, as I just do this sort of stream of consciousness a lot of off the top of my head, with, of course, the assistance of these many materials that gathered together in Adobe Acrobat. But I want to take a step back now, and I want to hear from. Let's listen to the conversation I recorded with a couple city council members on Friday. I would have loved to have it live and, you know, have them take your questions. Unfortunately, it couldn't work that way. One of these council members is on the Capital Metro Board, and the Capital Metro Board is meeting right now. So not to like put the competition out there as far as live streams go, but you know, they're not talking straight to you. That's the difference. Anyway, so this is these are Austin City Council member Mike Siegel, who is skeptical that spending this money on caps is a good idea, and Austin City Council member Chito Vela, who is all for it. And so I began the conversation. It runs about an hour. I began the conversation by with Chito, because he was first on my screen, and I said, "Hey, you're all in favor of these caps, are you? You want to build the whole thing?" So let's hear what he said. Uh-oh, no sound. Thanks for letting me know. Sorry. That is a problem. Let me see if I can get this sound working. And if not, I might just dump the audio right in here. Okay, you know what? I can't. So what I'm going to do, and I apologize for this, I thought this would work. Are you really not hearing any sound? No sound. Okay. I really appreciate you letting me know in the chat there. Bear with me one moment while I figure out why there is no sound. And it appears that perhaps I just can't do that with VLC. So what I will do then is...
That's not to say that it is a comprehensive analysis of all...
We're going to delete Mr. Hyatt Brown there, and I'm just going to dump this this video cut right in here. You know, this is live. This is live, as you can obviously tell. Thank you for bearing with me. It's 1:20 p.m. I'm going to do a little time temperature check here, because it is live. This is what we do on the radio. National Weather Service, Austin. Give you a little weather forecast while I, you know what, the weather forecast is that it's going to be hot because it's Austin, Texas, and it is, actually it's only May, so it is hotter than it normally is, but it's 85 degrees right now, 63% humidity, making the heat index 90, and it's just going to be like sort of 90s this week. There might be a 20% chance of showers and thunderstorms this afternoon, though. Anyway, that's, I'm just messing around here. I do have the full video, so I could just throw it in here. The thing I liked about VLC is that I can pause and I can pause and I can play, and rewind, but this way it's either all or nothing. So let me pop this in. I know you can't see my face, but oops, I'm going to add. Come on, it doesn't like me doing this on the fly, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to add this video, and I know you don't see anything right now, but I promise you, it's right around the corner. Add source, and we go bang, and we go Forgive me for this. I'm learning here as we go. But I think it's all worth it in the end. Okay, this is the one. All right, see if this works.
I do.
Bang, bang.
I do. One of the principles when I came into office, one of my major priorities was the I-35 project. And the goal was to get to where we could cap as much of the highway as possible. When I first came in, and just in digging deep into the project and trying to figure out where we were and what we were doing and what the plans are and all that kind of stuff, I wanted to cap from the river to 290, just past 51st there. That I was just, man, if we can cap that entire stretch, that would be wonderful. Quickly after talking to TxDOT about all this, they told me that because of the flyovers, from 290 to 35 and just the way that the grade, that where you have to kind of come up, it's not realistic to lower the highway any farther than about Airport Boulevard or so. But then in our discussions with TxDOT, and Zoe and Ryan and Jose have all been a part of this from really the beginning. We were trying to work with them to design it in such a way that the ramps as they come in and out of the project from the below grade to up to the surface, that it would allow us room to at least maximize the cap space on the project. So like I said, I've been working on this since basically the day I was elected on February 22, and honestly the idea of capping goes back to probably 2012 or so. Someone just sent me a letter from the Bicycle Advisory Commission dated in 2013, where they were asking for caps on the highway. So it's an important goal, and it's been one of my main priorities as an elected official.
Mike, are you against all the caps, or just to frame where you're coming from here?
I'm coming from a perspective of I hate the freeway. When Eisenhower started the interstate system, I don't think he imagined splitting cities in half, especially splitting cities down the middle on a line that was already the line of segregation, separating the white community to the west from the Latino and Black communities to the east. I don't like freeways. And so in theory, the idea of mitigating or covering the freeway is an attractive idea. But what I'm most concerned about are the trade-offs. This is an enormously expensive project where we would just basically send hundreds of millions of dollars to TxDOT to produce these freeway covers, whether it's 1, 2, or 5. And I think it's also at the outset important to say this is not like other cap projects around the country. I went to school in Boston when they were digging the so-called Big Dig, which, by the way, is not a cap; it's a tunnel under the city, basically. But even the Dallas cap, this was something that was started by philanthropy. The state and federal governments chipped in. The city spent $20 million on this famed Dallas cap that's about 5 acres. And that's not the case here. And so there's some very important things for our listeners to understand about this, that we're not talking about one continuous space. I saw, Nathan, you shared this photo on what used to be called Twitter. And even that photo is not accurate. What we're talking about is a series of pocket parks that are separated by lanes crossing the freeway that will be built whether or not there's caps or not. TxDOT is building the so-called stitches that go back and forth over the freeway. And so we're talking about a series of extremely expensive pocket parks that, each park costs as much as 50 parks elsewhere across the city, with uncertain amenities, with uncertain funding, uncertain users. And there's still outstanding questions about air quality, about how it'll feel to be on these concrete caps in the summer. So I have a lot of concerns about the quality of the experience on the caps, but I'm most concerned about our limited capital budget as a city. And we've been told very clearly by city staff, we've got basically a debt ceiling, if you will, of about $750 million. And I think if you ask people across the city, what's your top priority? They're going to say something like housing or flood control or parks or pools or senior centers. I don't think anyone's going to say my top priority for the city is putting a cover on this ugly, way too wide freeway. And so to me, that's the context we're in. It's not like, would it be nice to cover the freeway? Sure, it would. But is it more important than building homes for the people who need homes? And that's where I come against the CAP project.
Okay, so just to set the stakes then, what would the city have to give up if it built these?
Well, between 1 and 5 caps, and we're talking about immediately putting down between $50 and $250 million to kind of round the numbers out, just to pay for stage 1, which is called the roadway elements. Then there's another stage after that, which is the concrete decks, which would be between low hundreds of millions and higher hundreds of millions. That doesn't get us any amenities. So there's a stage after that, which would cost tens, if not hundreds of millions more to put parks. And then if you want advanced amenities like, 2-story buildings, that's another stage, tens or hundreds of millions more to build those advanced amenities. And then beyond that, you have the annual operating and maintenance. So to sum it up, if you want to build 5 caps, you need about $250 million right now. You need at least $1.4 billion to finish the capital project. And that's not accounting for inflation and other cost drivers. And then you need $47 million annually once all these improvements are built. And that number by itself is more than our entire city's park maintenance budget. So to me, it's the cost trade-offs which are the biggest concern.
And so are there specific, are there specific like programs or things that you would prioritize over those? You mentioned some already.
Certainly. So, we need another housing bond to continue to subsidize affordable housing, to build permanent supportive housing for people on the streets. And our last housing bond was $350 million. And I think we need another similar investment. We need hundreds of millions for parks, pools, libraries, amenities. Drainage is not a sexy issue, but as our city has become increasingly dense, I joined Councilmember Vela in supporting building much more housing. But now we need our drainage, our flood control to catch up to that. In my neighborhood alone, there's one drainage project that would cost $40 million. The city has a website that says we have inadequate drainage infrastructure in my neighborhood. And you multiply that across dozens of projects across the city, and all of these needs, added up together, city staff will tell you we have over $10 billion in unmet capital needs as a city. And that's not including the Cap and Stitch project.
Cheeto, is it worth delaying investments in affordable housing, parks and pools, drainage, wildfire prevention, and all that stuff to build these caps?
So I kind of reject the premise, what I would call a scarcity narrative, this idea that we can't do more than one thing, that we can't do all of the above. We've been doing all of the above. We passed a $350 million housing bond in 2022 that I, as a council member, voted for, put on the ballot, campaigned for. I think 2016, we had a $250 million housing bond. All told, I think we spent just short of $1 billion on affordable housing over the last decade in Austin. We have built more affordable housing than any city in the country, and by a wide margin. So we've been doing all of that. At the same time, we've been investing in transportation. We have put billions of dollars at this point over the last decade into transportation, into flood control. We can do all of the above. I just reject this idea that we have to pick one thing or the other and that we can't do both. The most important thing about the caps and what makes this conversation really unique and urgent is that we can have a bond in 2030 for housing or watershed or parks or whatever the case may be. We cannot have a bond to put caps on the highway in 2030. We have to make that decision now. And if we do not make the decision to cap the freeway now, that is a decision that this city will have to live with for the next 100 years or so. And I would further add that the idea that we are gonna kind of just say no, we're really not saying no. This idea of I-35 as a problem, of mitigating the negative effects of I-35, it has probably existed in Austin since the day the highway was built. If we decide not to invest in the roadway elements and not to cap any portions of the freeway, the city council in 2045 or 2050 is probably going to sit around and be like, what can we do to mitigate that horrible 300 6-foot gap that we have in the middle of the city, and whatever options they will look at are going to be much more expensive, less effective than what we're looking at today. We need to plant the seed that councils of the future can harvest to try to solve one of the most critical issues in Austin politics, the divide between East and West, the idea of I-35 as a barrier that divides that community. We've got to address that issue and reconnect the community and reunite the community. If we don't take advantage of this soon, we will never have that opportunity again.
You say it's not either or, but where does the money come from then? Because if it comes from, it's got to come from somewhere, right?
Well, and I want to put this in context. Everybody throws around these big numbers, and everybody's like, "Oh my God!" In our districts, actually, in on the border of D4 and D7, there's the red line crosses North Lamar. And creates some traffic hazards and confusion and so on and so forth. We have looked at dropping the red line underneath North Lamar for multiple reasons, for traffic safety, we don't want to have rail and traffic and pedestrians crossing at grade. That's a $300 million project just to separate one rail crossing from one road. So everything that we do, people throw out these big numbers, everything that we do is extremely expensive. Some minor flood control project is going to be in the dozens of millions of dollars and is going to pull like 6 houses out of the flood zone. We need to do that, but it's everything that we do in the city in terms of infrastructure is going to be expensive. The other point that I would make is that my colleague, Councilmember Ryan Alter, has done a really great job in identifying non-general fund sources of revenue that we could tap in order to get this done. One of them is, can we roll this into the convention center expansion as part of the project? The convention center practically touches I-35, and any kind of cap on I-35 right there would be extremely useful and helpful to the convention center in attracting folks, in making the area more attractive to tourists, to everybody, to conventioneers. Another possibility is this rental car tax that we authorized decades ago to build the Palmer Event Center. That is going to be expiring in just a couple of years, and we would have to go to the voters and have them reauthorize that for the caps. But that would bring in, again, a substantial amount of money that is not, again, tapping our general fund revenue, which comes from, property taxes and sales taxes. So, and then, there's a $105 million grant that we received from the Biden administration that was then subsequently taken away by the Trump administration. Where that ends up, I don't know, but the federal government has consistently funded and supported the building of these types of projects. They did so in Boston with the Big Dig. They've done it in Dallas and in Seattle and in many different areas. There will be support from other sources. We don't have those in hand right now, but this is a long-term project, and I'm certain that other levels of government will come to the table and help.
Okay, just to recap what your colleague Ryan Alter and his staff came up with, this is, and I want to throw this at you, Mike, and ask your opinion about it. Basically, their idea is, come up with $430 million without having to hit that debt limit, so to speak, by $10 million in street impact fees, $24.5 million generated by increasing temporary right-of-way fees, which I think are charged to builders, when they need to shut down a street or something. The $100 million in rental car revenue bonds that you mentioned, Chito. And I didn't know that there was, that was even a thing until very recently, but a lot of this is pretty obscure stuff to your average person, except this one, $37 million to delay the Red Bud Trail Bridge, but apparently the project costs already exceed the revenue available for that. $171 million by including the Cesar Chavez to 4th Street cap and the convention Center project and $50 million in revenue bonds backed by Austin Convention Center enterprise debt, which is supposed to be, that'll be paid off in 2034, I think paying off the Hilton, and then that would make another $20 million available per year, plus $41 million from the TxDOT loan. And that all together, would total more than $430 million. Now, I've not independently vetted these numbers. I'm just going off by the presentation that he gave to the work session. But Mike, if they could come up with this money without having to issue general obligation bonds, would you be more supportive of the caps in that scenario?
Yeah, if we can find some free money in the couch cushions, am I open to it? No doubt. This is kind of a very 11th hour gambit, I would say, by Councilman Alter and the cohort of 4 council members. Unfortunately, staff have not been able to verify or vet these proposals yet, and we're hoping to get that any day now. Some of these funding sources are completely non-viable for political and legal reasons. There might be practical limitations on others. But if there are no trade-offs, if that's the frame for the question, if we can have our housing, if we can have safe routes to schools, if we can build some more parks, and we can also, mitigate the harms of the freeway expansion, I'm much more open to it. Now, whether we should fund 2 caps versus 5, I think there's still room for debate. But as it stands right now, none of that money is available. If you look at what's on the agenda for our Thursday decision point, which is, our last chance before the TxDOT deadline to fund the first phase, the roadway elements of these caps, city staff has not told council that we can use any of those funding streams. And so maybe they could become available in the future, but even then it would have trade-offs. This car rental tax debt that might make $100 million available, I think we still have to ask the question, what would be the highest and best use of those dollars? Is it housing? Is it parks? Is it drainage? Is it open space? Is it climate action? Or is it the freeway decks? And so to me, that's where we have to get to the second part of the conversation. The first is, do we have the money? Do we agree with the trade-offs? But the second, I think we need to accurately value what these infrastructure improvements would really mean. And so there's a few points I want to go through here to really make it clear to the listeners. First of all, this is not like Dallas. This is not like the experiences in other cities, because really, this is not a continuous park that we'd be building. These are our smaller parks. They're going to be crisscrossed by roads, sometimes 4 lanes wide. And so, for example, that image that you've shared on social media, Nathan, it won't be this tranquil experience. I've been to a lot of these parks around the world where you do have that tranquil experience. The noise level alone is going to be about the sound of a leaf blower, about 79, 80 decibels. We don't know about the air quality, but we do know that the caps do not improve the air quality. And if you look at air pollution maps of major U.S. cities, including Austin, the worst air quality in the whole city is tracking the freeway. Also, I take this argument about essentially reparations, about healing the racial divide in Austin very seriously. And Councilman Velasquez and Councilwoman Harper Madison in particular, called that out at our most recent work session. But I think we have to drill down on the specific details of what's on the table. The caps, as proposed, will not create new east-west connections. So we have to think of the caps as pocket parks next to the connections. So with what TxDOT is already funding with federal support, Campo support, there's already going to be new east-west connections. So we're not going to completely cover the freeway in a way that people can walk across to and fro. Also, there's a severe mobility or access concern related to getting onto the caps. So if you look at the renderings, if you're walking from Austin City Hall and you want to go for your lunch break onto the cap, once you get to that frontage road next to the freeway, you're actually going to have to cross 8 lanes of traffic. And so there's no just kind of flyover where you can get from a nice, neighborhood situation up onto the cap. You're going to have to cross 8 lanes of traffic to get up there. And
I think it's, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Sorry, 8 lanes of frontage road. So to me, if you're trying to create a destination, a major public work, a $1 billion plus project that's going to benefit the region, I'm not sure that's it. I'm not sure that people are going to want to come down and hang out on these caps.
So the picture that I shared was one that rendering, the one you referred to that depicts a tranquil park. which you were calling pocket parks, but I mean, we're talking about 26 acres of parks. And that is a rendering that was created. The one on the left was created by the city. And then some, and I put it next to another image that depicted I-35 in the same scenario without any caps that some pro-cap activists made. And as a side-by-side image that I believe was based pretty accurately on the TxDOT renderings. By the way, I think it's 3 frontage road lanes in each direction, not 4. But point taken, you'd have to cross a wide road to get there.
And if I could just clarify that one point, Nathan. Mm-hmm. So at 5th Street, at 6th Street, and at 7th Street, there are going to be crossings, which are each, as I understand, 4 lanes, 2 lanes in each direction.
Because of the turn lanes.
Between, so like that rendering that's been shared broadly, and I've criticized city staff for this rendering, it's not accurate. Because, like the idea of flying kites and having these amenities, I'm not sure that's going to fit. The largest proposed cap will be 5 acres. That's the Cesar Chavez to 4th Street. And so that's the largest contiguous space in terms of the downtown caps, at least. But I just want to point out that there's a little bit of a rose-colored glasses view of what the caps are actually going to look like and feel like.
Well, I mean, have you ever been to Clyde Warren Park in Dallas?
I haven't.
Okay, so that's the only one that I've been to. I mean, I've driven through the Big Dig, but that's the only like real highway park. And when I went there, I mean, I expected it to be kind of gross, but it was actually a pretty pleasant urban park. You couldn't tell there was a freeway beneath you. The air quality didn't seem any worse. It wasn't like having a leaf blower going, because those leaf blowers could be pretty annoying, especially that one tone they always seem to like, emphasize. It's real. I don't know. That's a whole other issue. So I wonder if you all or everyone is on the same page about what these parks would actually be like, what the reality would be like if you all have the same vision, or if it's been represented in an accurate way. Like you say, you're not happy with the renderings the city staff made. You say they're not realistic, or maybe they play up the good and downplay the bad. Indeed, when you look at this rendering of the 4th to 7th Street cap, the frontage roads that you're talking about are kind of, you can't see them very well. They're hidden behind the trees. And when you zoom in this high-res image, you can see like there are little light streaks on the cars that kind of make it harder to see. So I get what you're saying.
And just before you go to Tito, I mean, they've actually recently said they can't plant trees on the caps. So there won't be trees.
Oh, that must be a recent one, because I've heard that.
I don't think that's accurate, because I mean, you can't the root balls you do have to watch, but Clyde Warren has trees. Every cap park that I've been to, and I've been to multiple cap parks around there, we're not talking about something that we're not the first adopters here. This is going to be the 14th, 15th highway cap project in the country. And so I don't really think we have to speculate about what the cap park would look like. Again, we have one in Dallas. The Big Dig is one. I went to one in Phoenix. There's one in Denver. There's one in Seattle. They're really not bad. Clyde Warren is, I would say, exceptional. And Clyde Warren has cars surrounding it. I mean, there's major downtown roads surrounding Clyde Warren with heavy traffic. There's one road dividing the 2 caps on Clyde Warren with, again, heavy downtown traffic. But if you're in the middle of the cap, you would honestly have very little sense that you were in downtown. Again, I don't think that we know what the experience is going to look like and feel like. We can go to other cities and see this. And again, everything that we talk about, I think we have to compare to the idea of not doing anything, which is, again, this just huge gap in the city's infrastructure running from Lady Bird Lake all the way up to essentially Airport Boulevard, with, occasional bridges. And again, in talking about it, and the continuous, the idea of that these are not continuous parks, it would essentially be continuous just looking at the Cesar Chavez through 7th Street portion of it. that would be really one huge kind of highway cap park in that entire area. So I think the opportunities there would be tremendous. And the staff clarified that we're talking about 11 acres, I think, in the downtown area of Parkland. When I think about downtown Austin, where are our downtown parks? I think the best downtown park is the Texas State Capitol. Now, I mean, if I was going somewhere to enjoy a spot of green and trees and quiet, I'm going to the Texas State Capitol. The parks that we have, Republic Square, Brush Square, they're really small parks. We really don't have major downtown parks with a host of really nice amenities. This opens the door to that possibility. And if we don't do this, there's no other option for creating downtown parks. I mean, there's no empty land out there. So again, it's just that unique idea of if we don't do this, we lose the opportunity forever. That's really driving my support and the intensity and kind of passion about it, is because this is a generational opportunity that I do not want to miss.
But to Mike's point, Chito, if this is such a generational opportunity and it's so important, but now we're here at the 11th hour talking about where the money comes from. Why hasn't there been a greater effort to get philanthropic and corporate funds? I mean, Clyde Warren started in the private sector and it was like I think it was like a private group of individuals who came together. But now, there's not been any, as far as I'm aware, philanthropic or corporate funding formally identified. There may have been some people who've come forward, but at least the city has said that they're not aware of it, even though there may be people out there who are willing to give the money. But yet there's not a list that's out there like we have these commitments from these people, or there's not again, maybe and to Ryan Alters and his staff digging through the city trying to find these numbers. Why hasn't this happened? Why didn't this start like 1, 2, 3, 4 years ago?
That's a really good point. I mean, it started in many ways, like I said, 15 years ago. But unfortunately, the analysis and the kind of development of the plan is not where we want it to be right now. I mean, it is kind of conceptually, but we should have really been digging into the details and trying to answer some of these questions before. But thinking about the philanthropic, I think one of the reasons that we don't have philanthropic support lined up is because council has not committed to this idea. Why would you commit to money when the city council has not actually given the project the green light? Once we say, yes, we are going to do this, then I think at that point you go out to your philanthropic community and you get the support for the amenities, for the buildings, for the maintenance. Clyde Warren is completely supported by philanthropic donations, along with revenue that the parks actually generate themselves, the lease from the buildings on the parks, like that. That's long-term what I would imagine it would be. I mean, and to just use another example, another entity that is also going to build caps, the University of Texas. They have a really large cap. I couldn't tell you the acreage right now, but again, they're building a significant cap there in right next to their campus, just east of the edge of their campus, right over the highway. And right now, UT is putting their own money forward to build the foundational elements to cap in the future. They don't have anything ready to go yet. Will they be able to get philanthropic support to build those caps and then to build the medical facilities that they're talking about building on them? Absolutely. Do they have that lined up right now today? No, they don't. They need to take the first step. And once they take the first step and make the commitment to put that into the long-term plan, they will go to their donors. I would say that the city is in a similar position, that once we commit to it and say we're going to fund the roadway elements, I'm certain that philanthropic support will be there.
So my understanding, the latest on the UT caps is they've the regents voted to fund the structural elements for 15th Street to MLK, and then another 800-foot cap between MLK and Dean Keaton. They had the option of filling in all of MLK to Dean Keaton. So back to you, Mike, when UT, assuming that they go ahead and actually put caps on those columns, and you're going to see, whatever they put on there, presuming it's something nice. And then folks are going to look back at the city of Austin, and will they say, well, why didn't you do that when you only had one chance to do it, and that chance was then, which is right now?
If that's the situation, I don't think people are going to say that, Nathan, because those caps will still be in Austin and Austinites will be able to enjoy them. But I think it's important to zoom out. I mean, I almost, get caught up in Councilman Vela's rhetoric. I mean, he's a wonderful prophet of the potential of caps. But what he's asking Austin to do is something that no other city has done, right? Let's just make that extremely clear. No city in the country has put more than $20 million of city funds into caps. And my colleagues are asking the city to promise upwards of $250 million. So 10, 12 times the investment. And so the way that they are asking this to get done, and of course, it's a result of circumstances. TxDOT has been very unhelpful. They have a tens of billions of dollar annual budget. They could pay for these caps without so much as flinching. But they have decided to put the burden on the city of Austin and given us a very short timeline to make this decision. And so that's where we're at right now. A key distinction with the UT caps is that they got involved in the engineering process earlier. So they're going to be able to build real buildings on top of their caps, up to 6 stories tall. And that's going to allow them to generate more economic activity that will help fund the operations and maintenance. So those are our key distinguishing factors. But for me, when we talk about a generational opportunity, I mean, right now, when our homeless support folks go out to help people on the streets who might be in an encampment, neighbors are complaining, things of that nature, there's only 1 bed for every 5 people living on the streets right now. So to the extent that people think homelessness is the biggest problem in Austin, what is the generational opportunity to build 1,000 homes for people who are currently on the street? To me, 20 years from now, when we're looking back on this, if we were able to house 20% of our unhoused population with a good investment, or if we were able to subsidize thousands of units of affordable housing for Austin workers who can't currently afford to live in the city, that's also a generational opportunity. I also think that, the question of who this money is for, who Austin's capital dollars are for, is a key part of this. Because I think most of Austin tends to live their lives in the neighborhoods they live in. And we have a park equity analysis that show that a lot of parts of town, especially the outskirts of the city, as Austin has rapidly grown. In District 7, in my district, you've got the older neighborhoods like Brentwood and Allendale and Crestview. But then you've got all these neighborhoods north of 183 that don't have the same amenities as those core neighborhoods. So they're missing a pool. Some of those neighborhoods have to drive to Pflugerville for a pool, to drive to Pflugerville for a library, or drive 15 minutes or more to get to a city amenity. And so to me, we can make a much bigger impact on people's day-to-day lives by sprinkling this investment around the city. If each council district had $20 million to spend on kind of a special needs capital investment, I think most of my colleagues would say, you know what, I'm going to build 2 parks, fix up a pool, and make sure there's a safe crosswalk in front of the middle school. It's maybe not as sexy, but I think it would have a bigger impact on people's quality of life. And the other aspect of this cap proposal that I believe Councilman Vela conceded to some extent is that we don't know where the rest of the money is coming from, and we don't know what the product will look like. And so even if we find money, through this effort of my colleagues that won't impact our bond budget, and we allocate $250 million of this, separate money, and let's say that's possible, and we build the roadway elements, we still have $1.2 billion in additional investments needed before anyone can enjoy a park on top of a freeway. And we don't know where that's coming from. And this is, to me, where the political context becomes very important, right? We are Austin, Texas, and the Texas legislature is up the street right now figuring out more ways to cut funds from the city, to make it harder for us to issue debt, to make it harder for us to raise taxes, to make it harder for us to fund our priorities. And then at the same time, you've got a federal government that is actively cutting grants that have the word equity in it. We had a $105 million grant for this freeway project that would have funded a good part of that, Cesar Chavez to 4th Street cap. Because it had the equity word in it, because the narrative was about healing the East-West racial segregation divide, that has been held back. And we don't really have much hope that money is going to be released. And so we're in a time of crisis. I wish we were in a time of abundance, Councilmember Vela, but I do think that scarcity is being imposed on our city. And so what do our voters expect of a council? I think it's to make responsible choices, to make sure we're doing as much as we can to care for the people who are here right now and not making a speculative investment that, if everything goes right, will bring returns 20 years from now.
Well, now, Chito, I want to give you a chance to respond to that. There are needs all over the city, and I hear this criticism from folks who don't like this idea that you're talking about putting so much money into downtown Austin, which is and Cherrywood and Hancock Center area potentially. But in this, but especially in the downtown area where generally it probably has a higher median income than a lot of and a lot more resources and nice things than other parts of the city. And the proposal is to pour even more money down in there. What do you say to that?
Downtown is for everyone. When you go to 6th Street, all of Austin is there. I mean, maybe not me and Mike actually, but my son is there. His friends are there. People from Killeen go to downtown Austin to celebrate. When you go to the hike and bike trail on a Sunday morning, the entire city of Austin is there. That's where we work. That's where we play. You're right. It's not where most people live, but that's the heart of Austin. That's the day trip. That's the let's go down to check out the ACL taping, or let's go down to the state capitol. Let's have a day with the family. That's where it is. And importantly, downtown generates a disproportionate amount of the property tax revenue that funds this city, that runs this city. Downtown is the goose that lays the golden egg, and we have to continue to invest in our downtown. We have to continue to take care of our downtown to make sure that we continue to get the property tax revenues and the sales tax revenues that we get from all that downtown activity. So that's where I think the caps will play a crucial role as well, because if we let TxDOT just build this Grand Canyon through the middle of Austin, that's going to negatively affect future tax revenues. That's going to make it much less likely that folks are going to build along that downtown area. That's also going to hurt a bunch of city properties that we own that are right next to these proposed caps, that are right next to the highway. The police station, we recently bought a public safety building, a new public safety building, and the police station there at 7th and I-35 is going to be moving relatively soon. The Austin Municipal Court also moved, and the city owns multiple acres of land right there next to I-35, right there next to a cap, a potential cap. When we build a cap, we invest in our own land. We can do so much more with the property that we own, the city owns along I-35 if we build those caps. The Austin Water headquarters is right there on 10th and I-35. That's where the 11th and 12th Street caps would be. Again, the possibilities for continued economic development, for continued economic growth are strongly enhanced by the creation of the caps, by the construction of the caps. On the flip side, if we don't build them, then what we are going to build there, the vision of what we could build around that area is going to be tremendously diminished. I mean, look today, look over the last 20 years at what has surrounded I-35. Not nice properties. The upper deck, right along the upper deck, there were a lot of really underused properties, very kind of low rent, 1-story, 2-story building properties. You look at 6th and I-35, there's a fast food drive-through right there. There's 2 gas stations that are back to back. Those are generating very, very little property tax revenue. If we build a cap right there, I mean, a cap in the middle of world famous 6th Street? becomes one of the most attractive venues, honestly, in the country. And the value that adds to the city, the value that adds to our reputation as a city with a great downtown, with a lively cultural scene, with lots to do, is something that we want to continue to invest in, that brings so much growth and development to the city and joy for our citizens. I mean, I don't want to take that away. This is going to be a great place for folks to play, to enjoy, to visit.
And, Mike, you said you don't like a highway in the middle of the city, but when TxDOT's done here, maybe there won't be the elevated lanes, the visual obstacle, but this thing is going to be wider. There's going to be a highway canyon right in the middle of the city. And you're okay with that just existing in that way?
No, absolutely not. If there was a way to turn around the freeway expansion project, I would be all for it. Unfortunately, when our current governor won re-election, that probably sealed that deal. No, I mean, I absolutely believe that the freeway is harmful, that it's polluting our air, it's dividing our community, it's causing economic harm, social harm. I'm with all of that. I follow Councilman Vela, and really, I think a supermajority of our council believes that the freeway expansion project is bad for Austin. But I think the question is, what do you do after you make that recognition? What do you do next? And at a certain point, we are putting good money after bad. We didn't cause this problem. And the question is, should we pay to paper over it to some extent? I've already shared that I'm a little bit skeptical with the actual benefits of the caps. I think you can compare it to a so-called vertical park that's being built right next to 35 called the Waterloo Greenway, which if you follow that project, it's kind of restoring Waller Creek as it goes through downtown in the Red River area down to Town Lake. They are restoring parks. They're adding new green space. They've built an amphitheater. And if you talk with those folks, they are close to fulfilling their vision for this Waterloo Greenway, but they have $30 million to raise from private philanthropy to finish that great project, which will do a lot of what Councilman Vela is saying. It's near 6th Street. It provides amenities, increases the tax base. And so when we talk about philanthropy supporting the caps, we have to think about what we're competing with for philanthropy. Because, the federal government has cut arts grants. So philanthropy has to fill that gap. The federal government is cutting education funding. So a philanthropy has to fill that gap. The philanthropy has to fund the Waterloo Greenway expansion. So I'm not sure how favorably philanthropy is going to look at this cap project as like a place to invest in a public good. Because as Councilman Vela has said, this has been going on for a long time. And so far, philanthropy has not stepped up. And so, yes, would I rather reroute I-35 to 130 and restore the heart of our city? Absolutely. And if we can decommission I-35 sooner than later, so we don't have to wait 75 years for that to happen, I would absolutely support that. But if we have scarce dollars, which I think we all recognize, and we want parks, we want amenities, we want to increase our tax base. If you take each of those goals that Councilman Vela has outlined, I would argue that there's another project we can invest in that would achieve that goal faster. If the goal is green space closer to neighborhoods that are near downtown, there's less expensive real estate where we could build parks. If the goal is more connectivity, we could build 6 crossings over the freeway at different points along the expanded I-35 for about $50 million that would create more connectivity. And so there's different, ways to achieve our goals here. And I think that's where the core disagreement is. I did want to amend one of my earlier statements about the trees. The clarification I want to make is Cheeto is right. We can build trees on the caps. But what TxDOT later said is we can't build trees on the crossings. And so that is one of my problems with the renderings. It makes it seem like there's a bunch of trees on the crossings when that will not be the case.
Got it. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that. I was not aware about the no trees on the crossings. Cheeto, you mentioned the economic development opportunities, but the city paid for this analysis from the DC engineering firm Hyatt Brown, the consultant, and they made the presentation to council members. And they were saying, they're estimating that property close to the caps within 750 feet would go up 10% in value. And they're also saying because of that Waterloo Greenway, that the upside is limited because like the Waterloo Greenway has already caused some property value increase. So is this analysis wrong?
I would say that the analysis, I would agree that there's a park premium that will be added to the properties that are next to the park. The question is 10% of what? Is 10% of a 6-story building or 10% of a 35-story building? And that's, to me, the crux of the argument. If we're not going to upzone, for example, the Fiesta, where the Fiesta is there on 38th, or Hancock Center, you're right, we shouldn't build the caps. It's not worth it. If we're just going to build 6-story buildings next to the caps, we will never recoup the investment that we put into them. If we're building 25 and 35-story buildings next to the cap, that's a completely different story. And what we've seen in Dallas, what we've seen in Boston, is a massive growth in real estate development, lots of new buildings going up, lots of economic activity being generated in areas that were very depressed before. And so I would question some of the economic analysis they put out. I think it's a very conservative economic analysis, which I understand. But for example, the FAR ratios that they were putting when they're talking about potential property tax revenues, to me, were very low. They were talking about like a FAR of like a 2 or a 3, and I'm sorry to get into this jargon, but the floor to area ratio is kind of the height and density of the buildings that they were anticipating. And to me, the numbers that they were throwing out there were very low. If we get a much higher FAR, in other words, if we allow much taller buildings in that area, then that's going to really increase the amount of additional revenue that we're going to get. And then looking at, some of we did do a tours for the Waller Creek. And again, talking about the pricing of projects, I think we're getting close to, $500 million or so on Waller Creek. I can't remember the exact amount, but I do know that they raised about $100 million in philanthropic donations for Waller Creek. So again, the precedent is there for our philanthropic community in Austin to come out and support a major project like this. And again, I think Waller Creek is a great example of the city being ambitious and doing ambitious things. I'm a FDR Democrat. I'm an LBJ Democrat. I'm Medicare for all. I'm, high-speed rail from sea to shining sea. Like, I want to do big things. I want to do big, ambitious things. My vision of Austin is one of the best cities in the world. We are really, I think, just kind of coming into our own on not just a national level, but really an international level. So what we can achieve, I think, is almost unlimited. We need to invest in ourselves, though, in order to be the city that we want to be, that we can be.
Is the Clyde Warren Park analysis fair, though? I mean, because again, Hyatt Brown made this point, like back during construction in 2011, the downtown or Dallas and downtown Dallas, uptown Dallas, they were just kind of beginning their latest phase of urban redevelopment, and where there's been already a lot happening here in Austin. I mean, does that matter, Chito?
It's always hard to separate out kind of cause and effect when you're talking about economic development. I mean, let's just say that. That said, there's residential towers going up right around the Clyde Warren Park. And there's a reason that they're residential and that they're not commercial. And it's because people see this beautiful park right there and they want to live next to it. And we've seen that kind of again and again in different areas where they've taken out freeways and not just nationally, but internationally. This has been happening. Reconnect Austin is an organization that has started around 2012, 2014, when this whole conversation got going. They have some really tremendous examples and discussions on their website about what effect the mitigation, highway mitigation, in some cases highway removals have on the surrounding area. And generally speaking, we just see them blossom. And I would just note on Clyde Warren, and I don't want to say for certain, but I believe the $20 million was for the first cap on Clyde Warren. And I believe the city of Dallas has subsequently invested at least 20 million or so on the additional cap, because they built a second phase of Clyde Warren, and now they're working on a third phase of Clyde Warren. And now they're also building the Southern Gateway, which is more kind of I believe in the Oak Cliff neighborhood. And I believe the city of Dallas is participating as an investor, as a supporter of all those caps. And again, that's just an example. I think when cities get a taste of what a cap looks like and feels like, they immediately just want more of that.
Mike, is there any number? What about if I'm trying to, this is as we wrap this up, I'm going to see if I can bring you guys into complete 100% agreement. Maybe we can negotiate a deal here. But like, is there a cap that you would, for example, maybe Cesar Chavez to 4th Street? I've heard some folks who are not really in favor of the cap say, okay, that one, let's do that, forget the rest. Are you open to a partial capping of I-35 in that sense?
I'm not completely against it. It depends on how staff respond to these alternate sources of funding. I do think we should shrink this project as much as possible, if not curtail it altogether. And so I think the cheapest scenario to build 2 downtown caps that have kind of this symbolic resonance of reuniting Austin. We could build the 4th to 7th Street cap that would reconnect, historic 5th Street, which has recently been designated, the core, thoroughfare of the Mexican-American Cultural Heritage District. And then we could reconnect 12th Street, 11th and 12th Street cap to reconnect the African-American community with downtown. And that would require a current city of investment, more like 44 million instead of 244, something along those lines. And that would be much less painful. It would involve, much less trade-offs. I guess, more big picture, I want to do something that maybe politicians don't do often and say that my debating opponent here, my friend, Mr. Vela, he might be right. He might be right. He might be right that building these caps spurs expansion. He might be right that philanthropy steps up, or we have a more favorable state or federal government and they come up with the money. He might be right that we build this line of high rises along 35 where people look over at these beautiful caps and want to say, I want to go down there and hang with my friends. And that spurs economic activity over a 20 or 40 or 60 year horizon. All those things might be true. But I think where I'm at, and it's weird because, Nathan, you may know, I campaigned as a very strong progressive, left-wing candidate for city council. And I consider myself a progressive. And here I am kind of almost advocating for a sort of fiscal conservatism. But I'll say my biggest concern is that we put the money down and we don't build housing. We don't build flood prevention. We don't build parks. And then nothing comes of it. The philanthropy doesn't materialize. The state government doesn't change its mind. The federal government stays anti-equity, anti-restorative projects of this nature. And so in that situation, which I could argue is actually the most likely outcome here, that whatever money we put down on May 22nd, nothing comes of it. We future-proof the caps, but the future never funds them. And I think then we're going to look back at this huge missed opportunity where we could have put hundreds of people into homes. We could have added a couple dozen parks. We could have fixed our leaky pipes, on and on and on with our capital scenario. And, I am elected to do a 4-year term. And I think if my goal is to do the most for my constituents and frankly, do the most for the people of Austin right now, I don't think caps are the answer.
Chito, none of this is guaranteed.
I'm a Texas Democrat. I have to be an optimist. That's been kind of, hammered into me. I think that's the only way you survive as a Texas Democrat. We're not the first city to do this. Multiple other cities have done this, have successfully done this. The federal government already committed $105 million, which was then decommitted. But again, this is going to be a continuing theme. We made a big mistake in the 50s and 60s and 70s, ramming highways through the heart of our cities. We know that's a mistake. we're trying to undo that mistake today. And we've got to be able to make the investments that will undo those mistakes, that will undo those problems. We can't just sit on the sidelines and let nothing happen. And to Mike's point about is this going to happen? Is this going to continue? That's why I think it's important that as part of our investment, we build at least one cap. I don't want to only build the roadway fundamentals. I want to build one cap, because once Austinites see what a cap looks and feels like, once they get a taste of what a cap is, I am completely confident that they will then support the construction of additional caps. That's what we've seen in virtually every city in the country.
All right. I'd like to give each of you a chance to sort of say one last thing here, if you have anything left to add, because we've been going on here a while, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about this. It's such an important topic, one way or the other, because we're talking about a lot of money. I think I went to Chito first, so I'll start by going to Mike first. Did I start with you, Mike, or did I start with Chito? I can't remember.
You started with Chito.
Okay, so let's start with you. So yeah, final word here, Mike. Plead your case. I think you're both are lawyers, right? So you should. It's closing arguments.
Yeah, can you tell, Nathan?
I can.
And we're both litigators too.
That's great. That's what we want here. So go ahead.
Caps have been built successfully elsewhere, but never has a city been asked to spend what we're being asked to spend. All the three caps that Cheeto mentioned as part of the Clyde Warren in Dallas, the city put in a total of $37 million for three different segments. And we're being asked to put in $244 million just to fund phase one of these five caps. And I think what Austinites want us to do in times of uncertainty, in times of fiscal crisis, in times of hostile state and federal governments, they want us as a city council, as a governing body, to make sure that at least we can take care of each other. And right now, to me, taking care of our community means instead of building a roof over the freeway, we need to build roofs over people's heads. Instead of building one extremely expensive park on top of the freeway, we need to build parks across the city. We need to make sure that our infrastructure investments make a real demonstrative impact on people's lives right now.
Chito, what do you have to say?
I want to help my constituents today. I mean, that's what you hear about, and people come to you with their problems and their concerns, and they want to see immediate solutions to the problems that they face on a daily basis. And I hear that and I feel that. But ultimately, my role in council, I see it as the future. What I want to do is I want to leave people in Austin a better future. I want to invest in the future. I want to plant the seeds that future generations will harvest. That's what we have the opportunity to do right now. I just cannot emphasize enough that if we miss this opportunity, it's gone forever. TxDOT was very clear about that. Everybody has been very clear about that. That's why we can have a bond in 2030 with parks. We can have a bond in 2032 with watershed improvements or mobility improvements or all those. We can always go back and work on those issues. But if we don't invest in the roadway elements to cap the highway this year, if we don't make that commitment on Thursday, we lose the ability to do that forever. And I think generations of Austinites in the future will look back and say, what was that council thinking? Because the problem of I-35, unfortunately, is not going away. It's going to be either we leave it as some huge canyon through the middle of Austin, or we invest in the future bridging, capping, reconnecting of East and West Austin so we can hopefully end that whole East-West divide that has been part of Austin's politics for way too long. We need to put that issue to bed. This is a real way to do it. It has great symbolic value, and it will hopefully just end that East-West division that has plagued our city for decades.
Austin City Council members Chito Vela and Mike Siegel, thanks for your time, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan.
Wow. All right. Well, there you go. There's a long conversation, big windup, and we just heard from Chito Vela and Mike Siegel there for a while. I think by now we've covered a lot of this. I just want to hit some of the comments that y'all have been making during this. And but before I get to that, I just have to say thank you for joining me on this journey here. What we're doing here, maybe a lot of folks are doing in independent, and in fact, I know a lot of folks are doing this already in independent media, long live streams, unscripted, talking about issues, taking the time to go in depth instead of just, the 5 minutes it takes to read a 500-word story or whatever. Y'all care about this, and you are obviously, folks who are civically engaged, and wherever you fall, I really appreciate you following along with this live stream. And if you would like to see more of it, which I hope you do, because I'd love to do more of these. I'm a nerd too. I like to go into the details too. Of course, I'd like to boil it down for folks who only have 5 minutes, but sometimes it's nice to spend the time and explore it in a little more in depth. If you like it, please like this video, subscribe to this video, share this video. Tell KUT, hey, we want more unscripted long form stuff. Because I'm going to be honest with y'all, not everyone in the world of media, of public media, thinks this is like the best thing. Or maybe it's not that they're against it, but it's so new for us. I mean, for other folks, this is like whatever. It's normal. It's natural. They've been doing it a long time. This is a new thing that I'm trying to push more into, just unscripted long form, talking about policy stuff, and I'd love to do more of it because. From my perspective, we spend so much as reporters. We spend so much time on a given story, right? And there's so much is left on the cutting room floor when we boil it all down to that 1 5-minute story that runs twice and it's done. That 1,000-word or 800-word story and it's done. And there's so much more, and it's not much additional effort just to talk about it, especially in a live stream. Now, so anyway, that's all I have to say about that. Except I wrote it down here. Please like and subscribe, and please share the video. See, I scribbled little hearts on there, so it's coming from the heart. Let me just hit up some of these comments. I just want to shout out those who've been engaging in the conversation here. Let's see, Timothy Lyon. Sorry. A lot of these are made about the comments themselves that were happening during the video. But let's see. Andrew Clement said Trump's administration is for 3 more years, and the next one is likely to be a backlash and fund such projects again. That's a reference to the $105 million grant the city of Austin lost. And then Timothy Lyon responded, probably a full 4 years because of department confirmations and all that. But yeah. Carson saying we could save so much more money if we just reroute I-35 to, I think he meant to type SH-130. Great point, Carson. I hear so many people telling me about that. Jay Trachtenberg, very well-known DJ at KUTX, has been bugging me forever to do that story, and I've been meaning to do it. It's on my list, I swear. And TxDOT and the Texas A&M Transportation Institute have some arguments against that. And I see the point. A lot of trucks that are on I-35 are doing local deliveries. But yeah, I think it's still a story worth exploring. I mean, how many? They only say a certain percentage of the traffic is local. They don't say how many of those trucks are local. I think they said like 89% of traffic on I-35 is local. But yeah, but how much of the truck traffic is local? Let's see. Roxanne Bogie, forgive me, Roxanne, if I mispronounce your last name. Roxanne says, I feel like TxDOT is Lucy holding the football. I know that metaphor. I know that metaphor very well. We also have some folks joining us on Facebook. And I really appreciate you. Shavana Longoria, thank you for all of the comments you've made. And here's a comment from Parsa. KW, Clyde Warren, has a frontage road in either direction bookending the park. Looks like the plans for this one show both directions of the frontage road configured adjacently on only one side of the cap. Yes, that is correct. This is the TxDOT's Boulevard proposal. I think somewhat, at least in their documentation, was like a reference. They were responding in their own way to the Rethink 35 concept, which was just to like close I-35 and just put a boulevard there and like, okay, well, we'll do a boulevard on the side. Of course, the Rethink 35 folks are like, that's ridiculous. That's not all we're asking for. This is horrific. But TxDOT's like, hey, it is a boulevard. I mean, you have a median and the frontage road is sort of like a more arterial road versus the traditional northbound on this side of the freeway, southbound on that side of the freeway. But I do think it will at least on the east side of the highway, there won't be a frontage road, right? I think it would just go right into the cap. In fact, I need to double check the schematics. You know what? I have the schematics already pulled up, so I'm gonna bring that up here real fast. I can't stop. Here, see, you can see right here the green. So this is north is left, right is south, and the frontage roads. This is 7th Street, the green frontage roads, and then everything thatched is like depressed or lowered. And then you can see there is the blue is a shared use path. So yeah, it would just basically be a shared use path. So it looks like, at least from the east side, you would be able to walk right onto the cap. That's what this schematic makes it look like. So yeah, that's all for now, y'all. Just one reminder that there's a city council. I know that y'all are hopefully following city council. Better things to do. You can rely on us to do it. I know, but some of you are involved in this and will be watching. There's a work session on this tomorrow, and then the vote is to Thursday, May 22nd. So thank you all so much. Really appreciate you watching, listening, whatever. And please share the video. And until next time, have a wonderful